Amazon Prime Day is nearly upon us, but what kind of discounts can you expect on GPUs, CPUs, and things like gaming monitors? Welcome back to PC Builder. I'm Jason. This is our May Q&A part 2. We're going to go through what kind of deals can you expect on Amazon Prime Day. We'll take a look at past Black Fridays and Amazon Prime Days. What kind of discounts do we typically see on GPUs, CPUs, PC components, gaming monitors, and more? And what kind of deals have we seen this year? We'll also answer all of your questions about GPU value. Should you be looking at an NVIDIA GPU or an AMD Radeon GPU in 2026? And does it matter whether or not you buy a base GPU model or you get a more premium one? If you get value out of this video, please give it a like, of course, subscribe for more cool PC content. Let's jump into it. This video is sponsored by Newegg and the Gamdius Atlas M4 ATX PC case. Looking for a unique wraparound tempered glass case with sleek styling and premium features? The Atlas M4 has you covered. This vertical airflow PC case features 4 ARGB PWM fans pre-installed with 3 reverse blade fans on an adjustable angle mount. Say goodbye to GPU sag with an adjustable and hidden GPU support bracket. And cable management is a snap with a front-mounted PSU dual chamber design. If you want a premium PC case at a great price, check out the Gamdius Atlas M4 at Newegg using the link in the video description. All right, let's start off with Amazon Prime Day. That's what Michael wants to know. What PC parts should I wait for and buy on Amazon Prime Day? Love the videos. Keep it up, man. Well, thank you very much, Michael. We appreciate that. Mr. Bear, who's sitting right here, also appreciates it very much. And I do want to start off with when is Amazon Prime Day supposed to be? Because I was probably mistaken in the earlier video when they first announced that Amazon Prime Day was moving up from July to June. I thought, hey, seems like they usually go the second Tuesday, Wednesday combination that's in a month. That would be the 9th and the 10th. Where's the announcement for that? If that's the case, where's the announcement? Because I did go back and I looked, how much lead time do they give when they announce these things? And down to the day, it's 21 days pretty much in 2025, 2024, and 2023. So if that were the case, could it be the 9th and the 10th? Not really. If they're going to follow that, could it be the 16th and the 17th? Well, if we get an announcement like the day I'm shooting this, then possibly, maybe it could be the 30th and the 1st of July. I don't think they'd split it in a month like that, though. So it does seem like it's possibly going to be the week of the 21st here. That would mean Newegg Fantastic Sale, Best Buy sale, all the other sales will start typically on the Monday. With Amazon Prime Day starting on Tuesday, going through Wednesday, then there's usually like an extended version of that, and all the sales will typically wrap up by the end of the week. So then what components should you be waiting for Amazon Prime Day at this point? Well, honestly, looking here at the Newegg combos, this is DDR4. Look how many DDR4 combos they have. Now, they have come up in price a little bit because some of the cheaper ones have sold out. They haven't restocked them. I do, fingers crossed, expect some of those to get restocked closer to Prime Day, and possibly they're just pulling those to have them kind of ready for Prime Day sales, because you can see there's tons and tons. But if you look at DDR5, and that's where I think most people want to build right now, because we don't have a 5800X3D, although cough, are we going to get that at Computex? That we should be right around the corner here. I see only one CPU combo with RAM. Now, the CPU RAM combos were the ones with the biggest discounts overall on them. The other ones are pretty good. This is like one with a, 512 gig SSD, RAM, and a pretty high-end motherboard for $392. That's actually a pretty good one. The one next to it, not so much. But these with the CPU were the ones where they were giving you the steepest discount essentially on the RAM. There's only one of those left with the Ryzen 7600X. There's only one left with the 9600X, and it only has one stick of RAM. It is 16 gig stick, so you can buy that second stick if you want in the future, and then you'd have 32 gigs. I know some people think that's a good idea. I'm very mixed to not really happy about that. And then as we look, it's really, there's a Core Ultra 7 here. This is actually a pretty good deal for $759. But then we just get into higher end motherboards with like a 2 terabyte NVMe SSD and 32 gigs of RAM, which sounds pretty good, and it is pretty good. It's like a $100 discount on what you can buy the RAM for by itself, and a little bit of a discount on the SSD, so I don't want to knock it at all, and you're getting relatively high-end motherboards with these, right? X870, X870E motherboards. So they are pretty good if you're looking to do a high-end build, but they're not the same as when you got the Ryzen 9800X3D or 9850X3D or the 7800X3D that they were offering combos with, that often got that RAM price down to like $90 to $100. The price you would have paid before the RAM crisis, which is really, really crazy. And they're just kind of gone. There's one more Intel Core Ultra here. There's this crazy one for like $3,200. I'd have to add all that up. That's just way too much to do in my head. It does maybe seem like it is a good deal because it does have a RTX 5080 with it. I'll leave this link down in the video description. If it's a good deal, you can check it out. But you can see a lot of those combos have gone away. Now, fingers crossed, Newegg will bring them back when it's sale time. Okay, so that's PC components, but what about GPUs? I think that's the one that everybody wants to know. That's what SJ Rombouts, I hope I said that right, wants to know as well. Do you think any of the graphics card needed for smooth 4K gaming will get a discount on Prime Day? They recently bought a 9070 XT with 25% off, but they're wondering if they bought it too early. Well, I do think if you're looking for GPU discounts, there is potentially some good news on the horizon. Let's quickly go through that. GPU prices have been dropping everywhere except the US. And even in the US, they've been coming down a little bit. So we had at the beginning of the year, GPU prices absolutely hard spiked up. Now, they said that was because of increased VRAM prices. However, those prices hit a plateau and they have been coming down on just about everything except an RTX 5070 Ti, unfortunately, probably the NVIDIA GPU that everybody wants the most. But things like the 9070 XT just dropped near MSRP in the UK. And then if we look over here, we have like the 9060 XT 16 gigabyte dropped to essentially its under MSRP in Japan right now and other parts of Asia. Meanwhile, those cards have become kind of silly expensive in the US. We'll talk a little bit more about what the market looks like right now in terms of the more entry to mainstream cards versus the higher end GPUs. The higher end GPUs just haven't been hit with as big of price cuts, which is kind of like mind-boggling to me a little bit. And then similarly last year for Prime Day and for Black Friday, we saw like CPUs get down to pretty cheap prices, $149 for the 7600X. I don't have it here, but the 9600X got down to $152 during Prime Day last year. We've got the 7800X 3D around $319. I expect to see these kinds of prices again. Again, $449 for the 9800X 3D, which at the time was a good price. We've seen that lower though. We've seen the Ryzen 9800X 3D sit around $419 instead because the 9850X 3D has provided some price pressure for it. Who knows how long they'll continue to manufacture the standalone 9800X 3D? We'll have to wait and see. But then also motherboards got pretty cheap last year. However, they're cheaper this year than they were during Black Friday of last year because we've seen all component prices absolutely hit the floor. But I would expect a lot of these CPUs to get tied into RAM combo deals because that's where you're going to want to see the savings. All right, Tommy Real USA has noticed something striking here for GPU price to performance. Isn't the 9060 XT 8 and 16 gigabyte terrible given how much better the 9070 and 9070 XT are in terms of performance? Well, you've actually got a pretty eagle eye there. And in fact, if you watch our GPU market update, which we will do again before Prime Day, but if you can check out the last episode of it, we have brought back our GPU value spreadsheet. In fact, let's just go ahead and pull up our GPU value spreadsheet right here. You can see, just scrolling down to the 9060 XT 16 gigabyte, the 9070, and the 9070 XT here, we do a price to performance based on 1440p FPS and current pricing. You can see right now the 9060 XT, $6.05 for the 16 gigabyte model. That's based on a price of $448. That's price to performance terrible versus the 9070, which is $5.38, and then the 9070 XT is $5.46. It's always been the case that as you went up the stack, the price to performance usually got worse. The mainstream and budget cards were the best value cards out there. And then if you wanted additional performance, you usually paid a price premium for that additional performance. Now, part of the reason for that price increase is that all these cards have 16 gigabytes of VRAM. So if that's a component that's gone up in price, yeah, 16 gigs of VRAM on a 9060 XT, which you were charging $335, suddenly right now, the cheapest one I can find at the time of filming is $439, $440, but there's a lot of them for about $450 if you don't want a white one, is this one right here. It's just the XFX OC White. Again, there's tons of them at $450 as well. And the problem is 16 gigs of VRAM costs as much for this as it does for the 9070 XT or 9070. Well, if the price of that goes up by $100, all of a sudden we went from $350, which is the MSRP, to $440 basically. Meanwhile, the 9070, you can pick it up right now for, I say only $50 over its MSRP, but it still has 16 gigs of VRAM. Why does this have a lower price increase than the 9060 XT, question mark, question mark? And then here's the Power Color Reaper. This is the currently cheapest 9070 XT. This is before Prime Day, by the way. It's $669. It's actually a pretty good deal right now if you don't want a PSU or any of the bundled stuff that Newegg is offering. So why did this only go up, $70 when the 9060 XT went up the most? So yes, absolutely right now in this environment, unless we get that 9060 XT 16 gigabyte back to like $349, possibly $399, maybe during Prime Day, the price of performance isn't great. Now, here's the deal, is that if you don't have the wad of cash to jump from $450 to $620, then yeah, then you're gonna get a 9060 XT. And don't think you're gonna get a better deal on NVIDIA. The 5060 Ti has jumped another $100 over this price. So the way I would look at this is, it's not that the 9060 XT 16GB is terrible value, it's just not as good value as the 9070 or 9070 XT. So if you can afford to jump up to the 9070 or 9070 XT, I would do it, because those are the best value GPUs in the entire stack right now, NVIDIA, Intel, everything. And if you can't afford to jump up to it, the 9060 XT is probably your next best bet with 16 gigs of VRAM, because otherwise, you're going to probably spend another $100 for a 5060 Ti 16GB. Although, of course, we'll have to see. There's always a possibility we'll see some big flash sale on a 5060 Ti 16GB too. Is there a big performance difference between specifically the 9070 XT XFS Swift, which is one of the more entry models, and the 9070 XT XFX Mercury? I think what you're asking here is, because one boosts more than the other, one has a slight OC on it. I think what you're asking is, does it make more sense to just buy the base model 9070, 9070 XT, or whatever GPU you're looking at, or should you get a more expensive model? For instance, what's the difference between the Sapphire Nitro Plus model for the 9070 XT and the Sapphire Pulse model? Yeah, there is some benefit to getting the higher end model. You do get slightly higher clocks typically. There's a nice OC to it. You also often get a more premium cooler, and then models will also come with better RGB, or I mean, you get some of the super high-end ones like the Aorus ones that Gigabyte makes, and on the high-end ones, they have like an LCD screen. You can really go crazy with all the little add-ons GPUs. In terms of just raw performance though, there have been times when, for instance, the 7800 XT, Gigabyte made the gaming OC model. It was almost 10% faster than most of the other models out there. And I recommended the heck out of the 7800 XT gaming OC, because they were selling it at MSRP, often below MSRP, and it was the highest performing model out there. So I often recommended that one in particular. For the 9070, 9070 XT, the 5070 Ti, I'm not seeing that same level of performance difference. Yes, if you go to like a 5090, there is a performance difference between some of the liquid cooled ones that you're gonna spend through the nose for, and some of the air cooled ones, or the ones with better coolers on them. So at that level, 5080, maybe you consider going up, not getting one of the absolute base models. But I think for most other GPUs, it doesn't really matter. Sometimes it's just going to come down to aesthetics. White cards tend to cost a little bit more. If you want more RGB, that tends to be a little bit more, adds like $20 or $30 to a card, depending on what price tier it's at. And if you want a good cooler with it, most of them, however, these days, they're not that bad in terms of noise. They're perfectly acceptable in terms of thermals, both for the GPU die itself as well as the GPU memory temps on them. I'd really have to think back to like the 5700 XT days when, there was a couple of cards there that were just absolute trash and would overheat. We don't really see that anymore. So if you just want performance, you should get the cheapest one. And if you want a little extra boost, you can spend a little extra money. Okay, Paul asks, are APUs worth it? What kind of games can they run? Honestly, APUs are, if you're talking about the desktop, the problem with APUs on the desktop is that I can always get more power at a nice big honking GPU that's got its own cooler that's going to draw hundreds of watts basically than I can in anything that's going to be integrated into a tiny little CPU basically. So that's the problem with APUs. APUs are fantastic for mobile, small form, tiny little form factors like mini PCs, handheld gaming devices, those kinds of things. They're always going to get crushed by desktop GPUs that can just draw tons of power. Because look at all the power and cooling I can fit in this particular PC sitting next to me. It's crazy how much more I can squeeze in there in terms of airflow, in terms of overall power, right? I'm just always going to be able to get way more juice out of that, and they'll crush APUs. So APUs are fantastic for handheld solutions where you don't have that. They're going to be great for probably some level of laptops at some point. Right now, they can't even beat an RTX 5050. So, it's just really tough to say that APUs have any kind of future. And people are like, well, APUs will get better in the future. Yeah, well, so will desktop GPUs. So it's like, so APUs advance, but also desktop GPUs advance just as much. So it hasn't been the case that we've seen APUs really catch up in a desktop, and we really haven't had to go to them since the great GPU crisis when it was impossible to get a GPU back then. So fingers crossed, once we get through this RAM crisis and everything else, yes, desktop GPUs should still remain king. I'll leave links to the GPU value spreadsheet down there. You can jump into it, put your own numbers in if you want. I'll also link all the Newegg combo deals down there, as well as any other really good deals that I'm seeing right now. If you got value out of this video, please give it a like. Of course, subscribe for more cool PC content. Like, did you check out part 1 where we talk about, are GPU prices actually going to go up? That's right. There's a new report by Igor's lab that GPU prices might skyrocket right after Amazon Prime Day. If you're thinking about buying a GPU, you really ought to see this. Check it out, and we'll catch you on the next one.